government over that particular provision. The whole thing is hazy. We should look at that particular section of the provisions of that section of the electoral law and quickly do something.
What would you rather have?
I would say let's have 2 political parties based on the results we are getting now, and put in the electoral law a provision for independent candidacy.
But one of the issues that's also been raised, if we're saying go with what we have now and from that come up with political parties, 2 political parties from your suggestion, one of the issues being raised is that of ideology versus interests.
Not really. See, for me, political stability is what we are aiming for. And even though it was a military contraption, the NROC and the SDP, at the governorship elections, the difference between the 2 parties was just 2 states. One had 16 governors, another had 14. It was a remarkable show of a stabilized polity. And in the National Assembly, it was basically the same thing. So having...
Well, the interesting thing about that National Assembly election of that particular, this thing was that the NRC was already in control of that National Assembly.
Yes.
And
but the SDP won the presidency.
Was going to win the presidency.
That's the novel. If we had continued that way, by now, I'm sure we won't be EC1, EC2, EC8 will not be relevant. That is the truth. I mean, political parties are scoring 5 votes, and they are running for the... How do we even know that they have any presence in some of these states? It doesn't make any sense. It's becoming a huge joke. As Prof said, registering more parties will be taking a good joke too far. And I agree with him entirely.
What do you think should be done in situations where, for instance, a party gets 51% of the total votes count at the end of the day, and the other one gets 49? It seems to be the norm now that the winner takes all. What do you think can be done about that?
So far, the 2 results we have show healthy rivalry. It doesn't, you can tell from these results that there have been no pardons, there have been no, I can tell that.
I like it that you put it that way. That you can tell.
The results, votes have not been allocated, as would usually happen in many states, that one party will score 1.9 million votes, another party will barely score 200,000 votes. It's preposterous.
Now, are we reading out the possibility of the courts or tribunals getting busy this time, or perhaps it will be a lot less?
If this trend continues, there will be very little for the tribunals to do, I confess.
But would that be good business for lawyers, Prof?
Well, lawyers are on call for any aggrieved or dissatisfied litigant because the lawyers have the right to speak where others cannot really exercise that right. But quite sincerely, Mr. Agwebo's point is well taken. In terms of political engineering, we can't look at the past and exalt the past as if everything was hunky-dory. Now, we have to make progress. And it's quite evident from the results of 2 states that we're ending up with something similar to the Babangida formula. One a little to the left, and the other a little to the right. Now you can see, generally speaking, that the new parties have their job cut out for them. They lack the muscle, the financial and organization wherewithal to really stand up and stake a claim for governance. That is what we are seeing now. The young shall grow, or they have grown, but they are still growing. They really can't provide sufficient competition to are the established parties. The established parties themselves are in a process of evolution. That's why you see politicians crisscrossing the parties. You belong to one party in the morning, in the afternoon, you switch sides.
Which is what's making people question the difference between the two.
No, I've said on this program too that the parties are the same poison. Only the labels of the bottles are different. But then that will, with time, clear-cut distinctions will evolve. Ideologically, it's beginning to evolve now, especially with regards to the NNPC. The NNPC is the cash cow of Nigeria. And if you want to sell it off to your friends and cronies, I know the Labour has said they will resist. So that's making our politics ideological. It's going to be more interesting, okay, if people now vote for those who want to unbundle, that's the language we now use, unbundle the NNPC, and others who believe that unbundling the NNPC is selling the heirlooms and the family jewels. So ideology is so exciting.
But how do you see that playing out, Prof? If you have two key parties just coming up and saying, look, this is what we believe in, this is what we will stick by, how do you see the citizens just keying into some of these things?
No, that will heighten the ideological consciousness of the citizenry. And that's what we've been yearning for, that we should not vote for candidates on the basis of ethnicity, on the basis of religion. The fault lines of Nigeria, we want to de-emphasize. When you are ideological, you go ideological, then the chances are you aggregate votes along those lines instead of primordial sentiments. This guy is from my area, and there are so many in Nigeria who can reason out of that mold. They just look at his face, this is
my brother.
My brother, or it's religious bigotry. We don't need that. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter where the president comes from, even his religion. So long as he can draw the lines between those predilections and national interest.
I'll come back to this and follow that up, just in a bit. But let's see, even though we didn't see people come up, party agents, to make a comment or two. But let's get to our correspondent, Linda Kigbe, who is there at INEC's National Collation Center. Linda, were there any grumblings behind the scenes, or they just felt, well, so far, so good?
Yeah, so far so good. There's been, the hall has been really peaceful so far. We saw the returning officers from Osun and Ekiti states. They came with the results, and then the party agents are here, and none of the party agents have disagreed with the results from Osun and Ekiti states. So far, we're just waiting for the next sets of results to come in. The INEC chairman adjourned till 2:30 to allow more results come from the states, because he says that more of the returning officers are on their way from the states. So we are waiting for them to get here.
But what do people expect? Is there any suggestions or word about how many more states we expect to come in with their results today?
Now, that's the thing. The INEC chairman did not specify. He didn't even tell us which states are expected, to come today. So we have no idea how many returning officers from the states are expected today. He's just saying we'll resume by 2:30. Some states are coming. So even the Ekiti and Osun state, we're only aware of Ekiti state because the INEC chairman had said yesterday in his briefing that Ekiti state was ready and they were coming to Abuja. We weren't even aware that immediately after the Ekiti state returning officer had spoken, there was no indication that the Osun State returning officer was already here. So he doesn't give any, any hint of which state is going to come to present the election results.
Much as he said, yes, there will be that of Ekiti happening today, but many just thought, okay, well, maybe the chairman himself was going to announce the next state before they then come forward. But when the state came up, he said, look, which states could you just, for the records, let us know? Do you get a sense that there seems to be a little more tight-lipped INEC this time around?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
I mean, do you think the INEC is being a lot more tight-lipped this time compared to the previous one?
I don't think there is much difference. This was what also happened in 2015. The then INEC chairman did not also give, an indication of which state was coming up. He would just say, the returning officer of this state is available in the hall and come up to present the results. So I think this has been the practice for at least the last elections in 2015.
Well, we also have spoken about some of the other political parties. Lots of people talked about the alternative, the third force, or whichever platform they think. Did you see any of those party agents? What were they thinking concerning this result, or perhaps even the Senate or the National Assembly's result?
Yeah, yesterday was actually when we saw much of the party agents. They were all here, or the bulk of them were here yesterday. But today we're not seeing that much of the party agents, just a few. We expect to see more of them as we come, because you have over 70 political parties. If you listen to the results coming up, there were quite a number of political parties, so we had expected that we'd see, I think, that much number of party agents here, but we didn't see that. I think we saw it about like 30 party agents here.
All right, then, Linda, we'll wait up until 2:30 when the next batch of results should have arrived. So thank you very much indeed, correspondent Linda Ekiti, right there at the INEC National Collation Center. Well, Mr. Gobo, let me even ask. When Prof spoke about seeing us keen to ideology, do you think there'll be any difference if that were to happen, assuming if we had a parliamentary system of governance? Would it drive home the message more, or there might be little or no difference? Presidential or parliamentary, but ideology will be ideology.
That's a tough one, because, the Nigerian is really, really difficult to define by things like principles and ideology in politics. What we are used to here is, pecuniary inducements, and those are the kind of considerations that will advise where he votes for. But for me, and having studied the trend for nearly 3 decades now, I can tell you for free that the Nigerian is either a conservative or a progressive. In the days of UPN, NPN, and so on and so forth, these were rigidly held to principles. You couldn't, I don't recall that any major one block person moved to another across ideological lines, for instance. What you had was alliances and, all kinds of alignments, which suddenly just broke off, especially since 1999. Alliances don't even work anymore here now, except the other day I was really, really beside myself when I saw a group of, 7 political presidential aspirant candidates who had gone to the villa to pledge that they will now vote for or adopt. That's as laughable as you can ever have. So, if you are either conservative or progressive, then we know where you stand. Money cannot play a role in where you stand. And
what, as a result of the ideology?
Look, how could you ever tell Taisolari that you would give him money so that he could become anything but what he was?
Yeah, but does it mean that politicians will transform into hardliners?
There's no hardline. Don't use that word, because they are not socialists anymore. I'm just saying, by nature, you are either of the conservative bloc or of the progressive bloc. And you look at all the parties and you say, this is the one I think I can identify with.
But in the lead up to these elections, we also had other candidates from other political parties who had their own ideas too, had their own ideology, and played prominent role, at least when we saw them on television. Do you think that role, that prominency that they exuded at that point has fizzled away?
For me, I don't want to begin to really say this, but anybody who thinks he had enough money would go and pick up the forms to run for president before he starts to look at what ideological platform do I adopt that will garner me votes. That is the bottom line. So
you think that will change?
Being very bright, as we have seen some of the candidates, we have a number of them that are very brilliant. Their ideas are even exciting. That's where I think Nigeria is headed. But they didn't have no platform. And if you thought you were sufficiently armed with political knowledge of this country, you should have joined one of these ones we are talking about now and wrestle your way to the top and find a place for yourself, rather than go and waste away gathering 10 votes here, 20 votes there, 40 votes there. I'm sorry, but this is the way I really see it, because that's why we are held back right now, and we have to wait perhaps until Wednesday before we know who our next president will be.
All right, Idegwa, we know you need to run. We appreciate your time, at least coming on this minute. But I know that they've taken a break to 2:30, so that gives you some sort of opinion. But we'll still have Prof here in the meantime. But Prof, I'm just wondering, because, I mean, if the ideological kind of politics takes shape, what do you see happening to, because we had some politicians here, even the new ones who just got into the fray, who will tell you, when they get out there to campaign, the people always expect something other than campaign rhetoric.
Well, when I used to tell my students that there's no free lunch. They say, not even in Freetown. So Nigerians, they want a better life for their family, for themselves. Politics in today's Nigeria is like a beauty contest. Okay, all the candidates now brandish all manner of promises, although the promises are existential. We want to construct a road, we want to build a hospital. This is the only country where people go to lunch the unimaginable. Everything is on lunch, whereas things that we should take for granted.
Even electric poles.
Everything. So I suspect, though, that the young who say they now have the right to run, they will be compelled to come together. You know what we were noticing during the hustings? On this platform, channels, we thought the younger people would arrive at some consensus. But they all decided to go their separate ways. So they blew that chance, that opportunity, a new brand of politics. It seems Mr. Aguabo insists that you're either conservative or progressive. If most Nigerians are conservative, which I doubt, then, of course, the more things change, the more they will remain the same. But if really we want to cure the lapses of our political system, then there should be a deliberate and conscious attempt to forge alliances that will result in ideological politics. The older politicians that you mentioned, the Awolowos, you know, Zik, Tony Enahoro, these were politicians who looked like they were 12 feet tall. So when somebody like Anthony Enahoro abandoned the social democratic framework of AG and joined the MPN, some of us said, what is going on here? This is the man who moved the motion for the independence of Nigeria. And a very articulate guy. If you ever engage Tony Enahoro, you know you're in the presence of a master. So if even at that time they could shift ground, so to speak, then the young people, I think they will learn from the lessons of history. I have a lot of confidence in the young people. But the question is, everybody wants to be in charge. That can't happen. They must subsume their egos, political egos, in order to forge a common manifesto of what they are promising for Nigeria.
We'll explore that a little further when we come back from this break in just a moment. Don't go away.